So I currently live in two off-grid tiny houses, and I think I might be about to buy a third. Let's talk about it. The backstory. I'm a single mum of two. I have lived off-grid with them in two off-grid tiny houses on my own land in central Victoria in lovely Australia. It's been an incredible time for us. I came to tiny house living through financial necessity. I was in a pretty bad way before I went tiny, and it's been completely life-changing for me. I love living here. I have my own space. I am one with nature. Um, and the lifestyle that's afforded me living here with such teeny tiny overheads has really been life-changing for me, especially given that I am a small business owner, and we don't make millions of dollars. I'm amazed at the kind of lifestyle I've been able to live over the last few years as a result of being in a tiny house. So for that, I'll be forever grateful. I've lived very independently from my parents. I left home at the age of 18 to go to uni and go to the big city, like most country teenagers do. And I've lived 3 hours away from them ever since, so we haven't been very close, and we really haven't had that support network at all. As they're getting older, my mum and dad are both in their 70s now. Their health starts to deteriorate a little bit. You start to realize, I guess, at that age, what your limitations are and what you just do not want to be doing and what you don't want for your life anymore, and that you want to live maybe more simply, with less stuff to do and just enjoy your time. And I'm looking forward to that stage of my life too. So a year or so ago, my mum found an ad I think it was on Facebook or something, for a beautiful retirement village on the Bellarine Peninsula in Victoria, which is like 4 hours drive from where they live currently in Horsham. They've been in Horsham and the Wimmera their whole lives, but I think mum just quietly has been longing for a change and a sea change for a lot longer than that. So mum's seen this ad, and she's now got her name down on the waiting list at this beautiful retirement village on the Bellarine Peninsula. We don't really have any other family down there that we're close to, and no real ties and connections, but she's just felt like within herself, it's time. So recently I went and did the dutiful oldest daughter thing, seeing as my younger sister is interstate in Queensland, and visited this retirement village with them, did the tour, and this thing is gorgeous. It is so luxurious, like I wish I could live there now. And they fell in love with it, and their name is now on the waiting list to move to the coast. So looking at these beautiful villas and imagining this beachside kind of lifestyle they're going to have, I had jokingly offhand said, oh my God, if you guys move down here, I'll move 10 minutes away too, and we can all live by the beach. And I don't think mum realised I was serious. So cut to today, I have gotten home and started to think about this on the 2 hour drive back to my place in Mount Edgerton, and thought, well, what's stopping me from doing that? I think, I've got the tiny house here. I own my own property. I've got a little bit of sort of backing behind me now that I may be actually in a position to sell up and buy a tiny, or move my current tiny somewhere else and live by the beach. I have always wanted to do the sea change thing. I've been a beach bunny for years. You guys, if you've been stalking me for any period of time on social media, have probably seen that anytime I go anywhere, the first thing I'm posting is the beach. I do road trips, and it's always by the coast. I've lived here in the bush with beautiful gum trees, and native birds and kangaroos and everything for 5 or 6 years now. Can't believe it's been that long already. And I think a little part of me is still hankering for that change. It's never been the right time until maybe kind of now. My son has just turned 12. He's in grade 6. So if we're going to make a move, now would kind of be the right time. He could potentially start year 7 in a new school next year in a new area. What if we moved? If my mind's exploding a little bit, going, maybe I could actually do this. Where I am in my current tiny house now in Mount Edgerton has been amazing for me. I came here through financial necessity. So financially, it's been a massive game changer for me and the lifestyle I've been able to have. It's helped me heal emotionally. I was really, really not in a good place. 6 or 7 years ago, trigger warning here, mental health one, I have to put one on. I was in such a bad state of financial anxiety, and I was so broke. I was broke AF. We had weeks where I fed my kids 2-minute noodles for a whole week at a time. There were always trips to Aldi where I'd have to check the calculator app on my phone to make sure that I could afford what I was putting in my basket. Often had to put things back. The financial anxiety of always having debt collectors calling with overdue bills. Every utility I had was on payment plans and they were overdue, and I just always had this state of contraction, I guess, that I felt like I was always doing something wrong. I was always in trouble with someone, which did not help my self-worth and my self-confidence. And I really spiraled into a dark place. For a while there, I did consider driving myself off a bridge, and that maybe my kids would be better off with their dads who could provide for them financially. Renting in the traditional housing market, I moved 5 times in 18 months after my last divorce, which left me in a very, very sorry state emotionally. The instability of that was really getting down on us, like moving all the time. If you've moved, you've been a tenant before, you know what it's like. Like, one landlord decides to up the rent a ridiculous amount. One landlord decides they want to sell a property. Another one decides that they want their adult son to move in. Like, we just kept moving on and on. And each time I tried to find somewhere a little bit cheaper, but the bills started piling up. I had credit card debt. I was seriously really struggling. Like, I probably looked like happy, smiley, briny as I tend to on the outside, but underneath, like, I was a duck paddling so fast, and I was constantly in survival mode, having to worry about where the next meal was coming from, where the next dollar was coming from. My entire life was consumed with survival. It's not a very productive place to be in. I didn't feel like I was achieving anything in my life. I felt like I was just barely hanging on by a thread in all regards, which is when I made a really big decision. If you haven't heard the story before, I decided, because I've been looking at tiny houses for quite some time online, loved them. Like, you look at them online, you look at Living Big in a Tiny House and Bryce Langston and the videos that he posts, and you get so excited. You think, what an amazing lifestyle that must be. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm 6'3". I completely ruled them out. I might be mildly claustrophobic. So I kind of assumed that tiny house living would just not work for me, especially given that I have 2 kids. So I thought they were a nice dream, but I just did not think that it was going to work in my specific circumstances, so I ruled them out. But desperate times call for desperate measures. So once things did get too much financially, I couldn't see a light at the end of the tunnel in terms of my mental health if things kept tracking the way they were tracking. So I sold everything I owned, like my fridge, a washing machine, dining table, bed bases we were living in, mattresses on the floor, got rid of the couch, got rid of everything for the princely sum of $2,000. If you've been a single mom and you've left a marriage with very little, you might appreciate how humbling it is to realize the entire contents of your life are worth about $2,000, which is less than most people have in the credit card debt. So I sold that and I bought the shittiest, daggiest, like Breaking Bad style RV caravan you have ever seen in your entire life, and I'll have to post pictures. The day I picked this thing up with a friend's ute, I looked at it and it was even worse in real life than it was in photos. I questioned every life decision I'd ever made to that point. There were like Cheetos on the floor, there were rolls of toilet paper, there were empty packets of things, there were eggs rolling around, and there was a futon in there that looked like it had been never wiped down, cleaned anything. I had grave concerns that maybe if I sat on it after a shower that I may even end up pregnant. It was super, super sketchy. So I did actually lift the couch and inspect it and have a look though. And when I lifted the seat, the plus that I realized what this caravan actually had a solar battery setup, which I hadn't realized and was a massive boon. If you've ever tried to buy solar, or you know anything about solar, they're expensive. So that was a massive win. That meant the caravan was really worth about $5,000 when I only paid $2,000 for it. So I bought this caravan. We lived in it on the only thing I walked away from after the divorce, which was an empty block of land up near Dalesford in Trentham in Victoria. We lived there for the better part of a year. It was it was good and bad. It was, what's that quote? It's the best of times. It was the worst of times. It was freezing. I don't know if you know the area at all. It snows there sometimes. We had no major power source. I could power small things. I had an outdoor gas barbecue that I bought from Bunnings on clearance for $50 because it was missing the handles to actually turn the gas burners on that a friend of mine was able to bring over for me instead. So we cooked outside in the peeing rain in the freezing cold, in the snow, under the annex, all our very, very basic meals on this camp stove. And it was freezing and diabolical, and we wore 3 jumpers like every night under sleeping bags and extra blankets through winter. But through that, the shining light was that it was actually kind of one of the best times as well. My kids now, looking back at that, say that that was a really fun time and it felt like camping, where as a mum, I felt like the biggest failure as a parent, that my kids and I were kind of trailer trash. That tag stuck with me a little bit, and I was judged by family who thought I was not providing stability that my kids needed. Yay! But I did what I felt like I had to do, and it turned out to be an amazing thing. My kids and I got obviously physically close because this was a 17-foot long caravan, but we actually got to know each other again. When you're a mum, you probably appreciate that you pick up the kids from school, you come home, they dump their bags at the door, right? They disappear into their room, and you really don't see them until you kind of ring the dinner bell at 6 o'clock. So I didn't really have much of an understanding when we were renting previously of what was going on in my kids' lives, how they were doing at school, because I was so focused on struggling in survival mode and trying to make sure that my kids could eat that I wasn't even thinking about any kind of interaction stuff. I really was a terrible mum from the interaction side of things. But once we moved into the caravan, all the beds were really close together. It had bunk beds and a couch bed and that sort of thing. And we would sit there at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night having these in-depth conversations about what's going on in school. Both my kids are autistic. They were, I can't even think how old they were. They were about 6 and 12 at the time. So it was a younger stage, obviously, than they are now. They're both autistic. So we had these amazing in-depth discussions about the meaning of life and atoms and, Mom, did you know if such or such or such, like, I learned so much from my kids. I swear to God, they're smarter than me. But we got really close. I figured out what was going on for them at school again. I found out who the friends are. I found out who the bullies were that I had to go take care of. Not really. And it was a really great bonding experience for us, being in such proximity again that I'd missed out on previously because I was so caught up in survival mode. And suddenly with that gone, we were able to live so simply, living that way just with a very, very minimal water bill and gas bottle for the barbecue occasionally, that I was able to pay off the credit card debt that I had as a result of all the peddling I'd done underwater. When I was struggling in the rental, I was able to actually start saving again. I got myself into a position where I could actually go to the supermarket, not just Aldi, Coles, mind you, without a calculator. That was kind of a game changer and a bit of an eye-opener for me, and was reassurance that I'd done the right thing after questioning myself and having the worst mum guilt for so long. It was so reassuring. And then the great thing is that at the end of that roughly 12-month period, I was then in a position financially, with a little bit of help from the bank of mum and dad, to actually buy my first tiny house for the, do not cry, princely sum of $35,000. This is back in 2018, mind you. So my current one is 6 meters long. It's for 15 square meters. It's built to Australian standards. I bought it secondhand, pre-loved, from a young couple in New South Wales, from a guy who was a landscaper who thought he was a builder. So it wasn't amazingly built. It's super simple. Most people would call it quite basic and rustic, but I actually really like it. And we've lived in that for more than 5 years. After the first year or two, when my daughter was starting to get into her teenage years, sleeping on the modular fold-out couch thing just wasn't really working for us anymore, and she needed more privacy. Plus, she needs block-out blinds and things because, again, she's autistic, and the sensory overload after school can be massive. They need that time to defrag and calm down and just zen after a full day of masking. So after some time, we'd been here for maybe 3 years. I then bought a second tiny house for around about the same figure, which was it's only a 3.5 meter long tiny house by 2.5 wide. It's what's called a dry tiny. So it's essentially a bed and a desk. It's like a bedroom on wheels, similar to a lot of teenagers have a sleep out in their own caravan and they have that as a bedroom. With my daughter Amber's tiny house, it's really just a bedroom desk situation. She shares the kitchen and bathroom in the main tiny house that my son and I sleep and live in. So that has worked amazingly well for us for so long. But then I had this conversation with mum about the retirement village and them wanting to get out of the country, move to the beach, downsize, and just enjoy the last 20 to 30 years of their lives, or whatever they are gifted with. And it made me realize that I've not had parental support, but they haven't been close by. So when I had both kids, I didn't have parents there, helping. I have a couple of friends who have really close relationships with their parents and grandparents, and they do sleepovers all the time. They get to go out and do fun things. They get to go out while their parents look after the kids and that sort of thing. And it's made me realize how much that's been lacking in my life, particularly when my kids were really little. That was tough. And obviously my kids are grown up now, and it's not so much of a big deal that that's not there. But I realized as soon as Mum started talking about moving and the possibility that maybe we could move there as well, that we'd actually get that for the first time in my adult life. And it's been a good 30 years or so. So the more I think about it, the more I think maybe it's the right time. This place has been amazing for 5 years, and it's served me so well in so many ways. It's given me the flexibility and the freedom to start Park My Tiny House, to start this business and be part of the industry. And I feel almost guilty to some extent, feeling like maybe it's time to move on and do better. It feels like maybe I'm not grateful for what I have if I keep wanting more, and that's something I'll have to work on. But the possibility is there. I really want to move to the beach. My son's moving into year 7 next year, so it's the right time. My daughter's just finishing her year 12 at an independent school that she's at. So it just feels like if we're going to do it now would be the right time. And the more I think about it, you know how sometimes you know in yourself when it's the right time, even if you don't pick up on the signals. Like I've been starting in the last 6 to 12 months here feeling a little frustrated with certain things. Off-grid life's never perfect, and there's always some compromise to be made. There's nudie runs to the generator at 3 a.m, always in the dark and always in the pissing rain, to fire up the generator when your solar batteries run out. And it's good and bad. For the most part, it's been absolutely amazing, like 90% amazing. But I think in my heart, I'm feeling like maybe it's time. I think it's time to move on from here and find something better and more aligned with where I want to see myself in a few years' time. And the person that I want to be now, I feel like I'm ready to move on from the me I was 5 years ago and embrace the new side of me that's developing as a result of being part of the industry and running a couple of businesses now in the tiny house space. I feel like maybe it's time. I think I've just actually convinced myself through recording this to do it. I don't know if it's possible. Maybe. I have no idea whether it's possible. Financially, I don't know whether anyone would loan me money. Maybe I sell. Like, do I sell my current tiny house and buy a new one? Do I take my current one with me? I got some thinking to do. Leave it with me. I'm going to write this all down, get all these thoughts out of here onto paper, and then let's revisit and see if this is actually doable. If you want to see what happens next, like and follow. Talk soon.